Responses, engine 5, engine 3, engine 1, ladder 3, ladder 2, rescue 1. We got smoke showing. Division 1, you're on location, box 23, reporting smoke show on 727.
Welcome to JobTlks podcast. Our goal is to facilitate knowledge sharing. The views and opinions of the hosts and guests on the show belong solely to the people expressing them. We do not represent the departments, cities, or towns we work for.
All right, guys. Welcome back for another episode. Season 2, episode 8. Episode 8. So learning, it's pretty impressive to look back and you think about how far we've come. We still have a long way to go, but pretty cool to look back already in season 2, episode 8. So this episode, we've talked.
Make sure you like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe, share our content, helps us a lot. So this episode, we talked about in the it's definitely a good piggyback off of our last episode. We've talked recently about RIT, about search techniques, and how to be good at those things. A lot of it comes back to, John, you said being good at the foundational approach of firefighting. So going back to the basics. So this episode focuses on 1, developing SCBA confidence, and 2, understanding the concept of air management. So when things do go awry, and you're in a potential RIT situation or saving yourself, like we talked about, some good basic techniques to bring yourself to a place where you can manage that situation.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to, listen, if you get in trouble, you're the first person that's there for yourself. So being able to have confidence and understand your equipment is huge.
100%. And I feel like the SCBA is one of those tools that, if I'm being honest, is overlooked. But it's probably one of the most critical tools that we use every day. Everyone, is like, oh, yeah, I feel pretty confident with the SCBA. I go in the morning, I do my truck check, I make sure my bottle's full, I check my, my pass alarm, make sure everything's working appropriately. But, are we really taking the time to be, 1, confident that we understand the true functionality of the SCBA under duress, and also 2, from the psychological component of working with an SCBA under extreme conditions, under extreme physiological and psychological exertion? It's like the great equalizer. So it's something that I wanted to talk about is how do we build confidence both with the functionality of the system and the physiological workload that we're exerting ourselves in a self-contained breathing system. That's quite honestly, it's not natural for the human body to be doing the things we're doing in an enclosed system.
One of the only things keeping you alive when you're in some of these situations,
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep. 100%. So, like I said, it's imperative to understand, not only the components of the SCBA, right? When you go through the academy, you learn about the high pressure system, the low pressure system, where that transition is, understanding your regulator, the face piece, how to use the buddy breathing system. We talked about RIT, how do we incorporate potentially our own SCBAs into the RIT concept, right? System limitations, right? Which we'll talk a little bit more about, what are the actual, some people don't know the actual physical limitations of our fire gear, as well as the SCBA and our supportive life equipment under extreme fire conditions.
Right.
So there's a study that came out a couple of years ago by NIST that showed, what is going to fail first, right? Is it going to be your fire gear? Is it going to be the actual physical tubing, the components? And it's usually the polycarbonate face piece, right? Regardless of manufacturer. So NIST did a study a few years ago of all the major manufacturers, and they kind of averaged out the rough heat ratio of where that polycarbonate is going to fail. Everyone has their own proprietary spin on it, whether it's, you think the big ones are MSA, Scott. Sometimes you see Draeger, but not really. I've only seen one department with Draeger.
Is that Euro? Does Europe use
they're
a lot
predominantly,
of Draeger?
But I've seen a couple departments that run Draeger. It's definitely an isolated.
Right.
But, most departments are either Scott or MSA. But that polycarbonate, the average temperature that your mask is truly failing at is 536 degrees.
Which is
not that hot when you think about.
I was going to say so much hotter than I thought. I remember when I first when they talk about gear limitations and what temperatures your gear burns up and this kind of stuff. I think they talk about it in the academy. I remember hearing that and being because I think some of the turnout gear was 400 degrees, different pieces, whatever. And you're really? Aren't fires 1,000 degrees? But then you think about if I'm in 500 degrees, Like that
Yes.
is
You're
hot.
baking
Yes.
like a piece of food,
Yes.
dude.
And there's
Yeah.
different things too. So like, you might hit 1,000 degrees on the roof, but you're not looking directly at the fire, so you're not getting that like radiant heat and stuff.
Yeah.
Like that's, I mean,
And
it's not that hot, but it's also
Yeah.
So it's very hot.
Crazy
It's
hot.
very hot in relation to like human survivability.
right.
But I would say, like, when I contextualize, it's not that hot. It's not that hot based on the potential of how hot fires are burning now.
Right.
Versus how, like, 500, you're going to hit that stage where it's burning that
Yeah,
hot
right.
very quickly.
Right.
But you're also getting held back by that radiant heat until you cool it down, and so you're advancing into
Right.
an area that you cool down for yourself.
Because if the outside of your gear is 500 degrees, you're feeling that
Oh, yeah.
in your skin too.
Yeah.
The scary part is like if you are, like they say, if you're caught in a flashover,
yeah,
I mean, you hit that temperature instantly,
Instant.
Right.
You know, and that's where you
systems
talk about
are
having just a few seconds, and even when you escape in those few seconds, you're not escaping without injury.
Oh, no.
you're barely escaping with your life.
So I suppose the first question is it's more of an open conversation. There's a lot of different approaches and styles. So I guess first off, John, do you run MSA or Scott?
no, we're on Scott.
Scott. So Boston obviously runs Scott now. Brian is running Scott. So there's
Boston switch? I thought they were MSA.
yeah, they're MSA.
Oh, okay.
yeah,
You
they
said
switched
Scott.
from Scott.
Oh, switched from
Scott
Scott.
to MSA.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So there's pros and cons to each system, and that's really not the conversation that we're here to have. It's more about how do you develop confidence with your specific, weapon system, right? Being confident with whatever you're utilizing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different approaches, and we'll talk about how to develop confidence. But what do you guys do to make yourselves a little bit more comfortable, or to help yourself develop confidence with your SCBA? Because I have a personal story that I'll share, but I was curious what you guys. Are there any drills or daily things that you do to like, hey,
Daily, I try not to, and I'm guilty every once in a while, but the vast majority of the time when I check my SCBA, I put my face piece on my face and breathe it down. So I turn the bottle off and then breathe it down until it's gone. For two things for me is like, one, it like that feeling of sucking in when it's empty is like a feeling that is awful, and I like purposely make myself kind of do that. The other is knowing that what, I could turn the bottle on and everything could sound right. Is air coming through my face piece? Am I getting a seal? So that's the thing I do daily. For drills, what I've done in the past is just get in blackout, or what I've done is you have like a partner and you just wear your SCBA and close your eyes and say, point to this. And you'd be surprised like how often you're like, okay, it's this, you know what I mean?
Right.
Or another drill is just rat fucking the pack, and then in the dark having to undo it. And it's not to make you look like an idiot, but just to like you start feeling all the pieces, like feeling the straps and stuff.
Right. I honestly, like, there are shifts that go by that like you don't really have to put our pack on for anything. So sometimes I'll like when you go into a call that's like we don't need to pack up for this call,
Right.
but instead I'll just throw my pack on and get out, because I've gone like weeks without having to put my pack on.
Right.
Especially if you're in the ambulance, there are days that I don't have to put a single piece of my gear on, because maybe we
Right.
just never catch a ladder call that day because we cross staff.
Right.
So when I'm working in the engine, I definitely go through my pack, make sure the bottle's good, the air's good. I don't always breathe it down, but not to say that I don't, but I don't always do that. And most of the time, I'm just purging it and making sure it's good to go. Sound your pass device, turn it off.
Yep.
Go through the whole thing. But aside from that, we do have like a spare pack that we can use to like walk on the tread climber with. So I think it's important. One of the things, you see people adjusting their packs on all the time, and we've talked about this before, like, guys who leave their bottom buckle undone.
Right.
And it's like, okay, whatever. But I have found that piece, like the bottom piece, and I think this is like well known, I cinch that extremely tight so that it's not as heavy on my shoulders. But that's a weird thing to get used to. But that's also how I wear my hiking pack. So
that's how you're supposed to wear it, like a rucksack, for example.
like a rucksack, right?
If you've ever hiked or rucksack, military, whatever, like the weight goes on your hips, not your shoulders.
Exactly.
And I'll tell you, like the people you see come out of the fire, especially ones that like worked or overhauled, and they don't have the bottom buckle. I'm like, do you know how much more energy you expended? Like
Yeah.
I'm very tight on the waist and then loose on the shoulder. So
Yeah.
like when I move, I'm not. my first couple inches aren't moving the.
Right.
I also don't
SCBA.
like that shit. Like if you have the bottom buckle undone, I find that it sways and shifts on my body,
Yeah.
on my back.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
Yeah.
I like to be like I don't know,
Yeah.
snug.
Do you are your packs like on the seats? So like if you're packing up for a call, aside from being the driver, are you putting your pack on in the truck as you go,
Yeah.
and then you get there and pull it out?
Yeah. I just get in, slip into it, put my seatbelt on, so it's already over my shoulders.
Yeah.
I'll probably do the bottom strap just because sometimes you get caught up in the seatbelt and everything.
Yeah.
But other than that, I'm pretty much packed up and ready to go when I get out. A lot of guys argue about it because they're like, well, it's tough on your knees and this and that. But I get out of the truck extremely
work.
slow.
Yeah.
I get out of the truck like a sloth every single
should,
time
yeah.
because
And your knees are going to thank you for it in 30 years.
every time. Turn around, assist myself down. It's like there's no need to. And if you get out of the truck 100 miles an hour, you're already missing something.
Right.
So
That's a good point.
yeah. So I like to get it like that, but
Slow is
if
smooth
we
and smooth is fast.
yeah. So if we show up but if I show up on a ladder or if I show up in the ambulance, it's a different story. Even though in the ladder they are in the seats, I don't pack up with the ladder only because I don't know. I feel like when you get on scene, you're gonna get an instruction, and that you may need it, you may not.
Right.
When you get to
That
the
makes
ambulance,
sense.
yeah. When you get to the ambulance, it's the same. We're beaching it, so you have to put it on to go to the call.
Right.
But
That's
it's
the
just
same
different.
for the squad, and my little personal like fear always is putting the pack on in front of people.
Oh yeah.
Because you do that swing and then the
Yeah,
strap doesn't
yeah.
swing around right,
Yeah.
and then you're like,
Yeah.
like fishing the elbow
Yeah,
trying to get
yeah.
in there. Like
Yeah.
every time, that's one like I'm mentally, especially if there are people
Uh-huh.
standing there watching, I'm like, all right,
Yep.
throw it around. Oh, good.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It's just it would be embarrassing if you missed it.
A few times, like I'm like swinging my pack. I'm like, man, I'm losing my touch. I got to get this thing in one, and I'm like swinging the wrong side. And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh no, okay, hold on, protect the regulator. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
you figure you're. So I mean,
I'm always
it's
afraid
just
of like
practice.
hitting someone's car with like a
Yeah.
latch. Like if
No.
we pull off and you're close to something,
Yeah, right. Smashing it around.
Sorry.
Yeah. Well,
Sorry.
Oopsie. Especially if it's like nothing. You're like, my bad.
oops.
Fire alarm sounding. But complacency kills, right?
Correct.
I do very much the same. Come in the morning, I check, I make sure. I've watched a few videos about that 100 psi of air, like how many for the average person. What does that equate to?
13 breaths or something.
Yeah, 13 breaths. I mean, I want the bottle as full as possible. I'm not gonna, if it's close, I'm not gonna replace it. Whether that's the right thing, if it needs to be replaced, I'm always gonna replace it. But doing the same thing, making sure that my mask and the heads-up display is functioning appropriately, making sure the vibe alert's working, putting in an alarm, sounding it. So I think that's the stuff that we do every day. But there's a difference between, checking the pack, going to fire alarm sounding, going to the smells and bells, putting the pack on, and being truly confident with an SCBA in blackout conditions. If you're, disoriented, lost, trapped, and like really being proficient with the gear.
Yeah.
And like the other conversation I wanted to have as far as like, not just the conversation of building confidence in like the utilization of the tool, is building confidence like in yourself.
Right.
To work through problems, whether that's psychological. So when I first got on, that was kind of my first exposure to SCBAs, and like I have no problem. I don't have an issue with confined spaces. But for whatever reason, if I went from like, conversational level to like extreme exertion, that being in that closed system really made me feel uncomfortable, and I have the desire to want to rip my mask off. Obviously, it's the wrong answer, right? So how do you, being honest on the show, right, which is something like if people can learn from my story of like how I work through that problem, I hope that people benefit from it. But anyway, so I recognized this problem early on, and I obviously the first thing is to recognize, hey, like I have a problem I need to solve and fix it. So for me, it's training, like, right? So, well, in the previous episode, we said that, all, rescues are made in training.
Yep.
So I bought a blast mask. So for those who aren't familiar with the blast mask, is essentially, I actually once got in trouble because I was training all the time. So I was on the assault bike, going from 0 to max exertion with this SCBA with a blackout mask on, to the point that I feel very uncomfortable. So I can get comfortable being uncomfortable and shake that feeling, which I'm fortunate to say I have now, but I have done it intentionally and continue to put myself in a very uncomfortable place. So I'm at least comfortable being there. But I actually got in trouble because I I was taking air bottles off the cart. I was refilling them, but they're like, hey, like that's not what that's for. So I was like, all right, well, I have to. So I bought myself a blast mask, which is essentially like a fake regulator. Then you can kind of emulate, like an elevation training mask was popular for a while. And now I have a mask at home. I bought a mask, and I just literally put on my, my like CrossFit plate carrier type thing. And I'll just do like a Tabata of like really heavy exertion for 30 seconds, rest of 20 to kind of get that variability in my heart rate to bring myself to a consistently uncomfortable place. So now I know that if I go from, resting at 2 a.m. in the morning to full exertion on a working fire, that I've been there before, and I'm comfortable like moving at 2.5 at max exertion, just humping hose line, that I'm going to be be okay.
People think that people who aren't familiar with wearing an SCBA think that you're being force-fed oxygen. So I remember doing a workout at my gym where we did like a 2K row, and I did it on air, and I was absolutely dying, dying. I pretty sure I ran out of air before the 2K was. I definitely ran out of air before the 2K was over.
I could imagine.
And then people were like, well, why are you so gassed? Like, isn't this like feeding you oxygen? I was like, yeah, I don't think you realize it's under pressure, but it is.
Well, it's also
it's a demand valve.
It's also
a
just
demand valve.
It's also just air.
Yeah, and it's that's number
air.
one. It's just compressed air, and it's as stale and gross as wherever the entrance port is that they're pulling it from, which is usually just the side of the building somewhere. And then it's dry, and it's a demand valve. Yeah. So you have to like take that breath, and it's limiting, and like how deep you can breathe. And when you get that big exertion, all you want to do is take just a big unimpeded breath. Right. It can feel uncomfortable.
And so doing the research for this episode and developing SCBA confidence, we'll talk about the concept of like ROAM, like rules of air management. Right, you're battling two opposing things at the same time. One, you're trying to get your heart rate down, trying to get your mental game in check, and also operating on a finite amount of air.
Right.
So the more you consume to slow things down, the less you have to work once you get to the fire floor to overhaul, what have you.
I found for myself where I kind of so I don't have any issues with it, and it's not because I'm an effing man or anything. I've been diving since I was like 17, and I've always I've really had no fear of being in a closed system. It's natural to me. Yeah. But I do listen to myself breathe, and I'm like, man, I just hearing the echo. I think that's something that I've not really heard, but like the echo of hearing yourself breathe, like that loud, just that like I think that gets people to think that you're almost breathing harder than you would as if you were just going for a jog. Right. So I think like the psychological end
Darth
of it.
Vader.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's like, yeah, exactly. You literally sound like Darth Vader, and it makes it sound like you're like pulling for air like maybe 10 times harder than you are.
Right.
It's just like when you lay down and all of a sudden you can feel your heartbeat, and you're like, why can I hear and feel my heartbeat? This is weird. And then all of a sudden you stop paying attention to your work of breathing, and you're like, well, why am I breathing funny right now?
Right.
And all of a sudden you're just paying attention to it because it's like highlighted. And I think that freaks people out extremely fast.
Yeah, I would say. And I think like I haven't had an issue with the SCBA, but I think like where you can feel like I haven't had an issue like claustrophobic, but I have had times where I'm like I can't get my breath, like I'm trying to breathe and I'm not getting as much air as I want, and a part of it's because I'm a bigger guy, but that initial breath that it takes to open that demand valve is like a short span of time where you don't get anything in your lungs, and you're like, and then you know what I mean, and so you're like, it's not like for me anyways, it's not like an issue, but that's where like I feel that's what makes me feel like I'm like, oh, I wish I could get more air, and when you take the regulator off and it's just like smooth sailing, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and it was an interesting experience for me because I had never experienced anything like that because I'm not claustrophobic. Like you can put me in a box and I'm fine. Like I have no problem doing like trench rescue or like worming through a hole. Yeah, I think it was that new exposure to like a demand system where I couldn't like just uninhibited.
Yep.
But anyway, so like anything in your career, you identify a problem and you work through it. You make a conscious decision to address the problem and fix it, and then you can move forward for the better.
Right.
But anyway, so doing the research for this episode, it seems to be a common thread, and like how do we take guys, put them in an environment where they're under physiologic and psychological stress to develop, one, confident with the functionality and confident with themselves. So there's a lot of SCBA confidence drills. I'll post some of them, but there's a lot of SCBA confidence courses. So this is from Fort Lauderdale, and they have an SCBA confidence course at their academy, which I thought was pretty cool. And this, to your credit, John, you're kind of ahead of the curve here, talks about varying breathing techniques. So this guy, he's an instructor. He's in a bunch of different video series, and I watched a few of them. One about like hypervigilance and like being psychologically on point, and the next one we'll talk a little bit more about Rome. But his name's Rick George, and I was just laughing last night because it was like Rick James, like, hi, I'm Rick James, but he's this like jacked old guy from Fort Lauderdale. He's like, hey, I'm Rick George. We're back. We're not fine.
Was this at 1 a.m. while you were eating Erica's chicken tenders?
Yeah.
Box breathing is actually very techniques. One is box breathing, the other one is belly breathing, and there's a hum technique.
So these are different
box
breathing
breathing
techniques.
is actually very simple. It is a square box, and we'll start with the 3 count. So you'll see the 3 counts right there, and it goes all the way around the box. The top of the box is the inhale, the right side of the box is hold, the bottom of the box is exhale, and the left side of the box is hold. So on a count of 3, we inhale, we hold for 3, we exhale for 3. We hold for 3, we inhale for 3, and we repeat. This is a technique that's used by the United States Navy SEALs BUD program. It's found to have homeostatic
it's actually Palm
effects,
Beach County,
which means
I apologize.
It decreases blood pressure, respiratory rate, and heart rate, and which in turn helps you kind of align yourself and get back into the parasympathetic nervous system and away from the sympathetic nervous system under stressful events. The other technique is called belly breathing. Belly breathing is different. It's the one that I prefer, and the reason I prefer it is because it utilizes the diaphragm to expand your chest and your lungs as
This
much
guy
as
could
possible.
throw a punch.
So it's just like
Hey, he's
eating.
jacked.
When you eat, the belly sticks out. When you digest, your belly goes in. When you breathe in, your belly goes out. When you exhale, your belly goes in. But the chest hardly moves. Now,
Am I the only one
this is
trying
for
these
you
right
to
now?
I tried it in bed
self-breath.
last night. I was like trying to get it down.
When you feel an anxiety attack coming on, when you feel panic coming on, if you're in the middle of a fire, something, you're trying to catch your breath, or you're trying to calm yourself down. Belly breathing is perfect. And it doesn't have to be as pronounced either.
I feel like this is what I naturally
Belly breathing
do.
has the exact same homeostatic effects as box breathing does. Breathing is used, that belly breathing is used by the United States Marine Corps snipers. They use that to slow their heart rate down so that they can shoot between heartbeats. Regardless, there's one more technique that's
Revealing
added
all
to
my
this
secret ninja
humming
moves.
on exhale. It's called the Riley Rescue Breathing Technique. It's been showed by a lot of different people, but it's actually very beneficial. So when you inhale and you exhale, a normal cycle for respiration is. But when you hum, it extends the cycle. By extending the cycle, you decrease the
Interesting.
amount of breaths.
Some people call
So
it
on the
an
next
om.
video that you'll see where they're doing a search and they're manipulating a wheel, we'll explain that technique in that video. But the breathing that they're doing there is the belly breathing and the hum. And the reason that works so well is when you combine the two of them, it extends your respiratory cycle, but it decreases the amount of respirations that you take. Yes, you're going to breathe to catch your breath. After you catch your breath and you calm yourself and compose yourself.
So that's where we're
you
talking
begin
about the
belly
two opposing
breathing
factors.
and the
Right.
hum. You don't incorporate the hum until you're prepared for it. That's going to prolong the entire respiratory cycle and decrease the respirations that you're taking, which means that your air is going to have, you're going to have a greater profile of survivability by extending the amount of air that you've got, the length of time that you can use it. So we've talked about 3 different breathing techniques. We combined 2 of them.
What I like about those 3 breathing techniques, and there's a whole video series that I thought was really good about how to, in their SCBA confidence course, it's obviously, essentially a confined space environment, how to manipulate yourself in space and time to give your diaphragm kind of full ability to move, and also how to address those psychological components. So that's kind of what I liked about it. There's 3 techniques. They're easy to utilize. Some people might already do them. but it kind of addresses one. You have the multiple factors at play. If you have the extreme exertion, like I said, you have the dueling battle of managing air and the rules of air management, which we'll get into, as well as you need to bring your heart rate down. But in order to bring your heart rate down, you need to consume more air and get oxygen to the body, right? So some interesting techniques, and Rick takes us through it pretty well.
I like that he says too, like, this is like, you need to catch your breath and then you do this to prolong yourself. And that's what I feel like when I exert a lot on SCBA, is like, I have to take those few breaths. And then once I realize, like, okay, I've taken a bunch of breaths, I need to work on like slowing myself down. Like, examples, like you make entry into a house, and then as you're like hitting fire and stationary, is like, okay, I caught my breath and like I'm hitting fire and trying to think about like slowing my breathing down so I'm not like burning through a pack too fast.
Do you guys, have you ever had, I don't know if they ever did any like training with us in the military or anything like that. It was like some advice given to me that was like, okay, well, like you're in pretty good shape if you can like sing while you're like running or something like that.
Yeah.
So I won't sing, but like you ever catch yourself like your breath gets in like the rhythm of like whatever like song you're like stuck in your head?
Well, that's embedded in military culture. It's calling cadence.
Yeah. So I got given the advice to do something like that, and then so like I have like a habit of just whistling all the time, so everyone knows when I'm like coming up the stairs, because I'm usually whistling and everyone's telling me to shut the hell up on the way up. But
I'm weird. Like I'm not gonna lie. Like I have like cadence on my iPhone. Sometimes I'll listen to while I'm running, just because it's like maybe nostalgic.
Yeah.
I don't know about you. I hated calling cadence because I suck at it. So I would always at the beginning of this like formation, you have the guidon, which is the flag. This is a complete aside, I'd always volunteer to carry the guidon, like to get off the first sergeant's radar. I'd be like, yeah, I got the guidon. It's because I'm not calling cadence. And I'd be like, someone get the fuck up here and call cadence. I'd be like, I can't. I have the guidon. Like, I don't know what you want me to do. Yeah. And then I'll go to the back of the back.
Yeah,
it's funny.
But yeah, no, that principle of like managing air is kind of embedded in our culture.
I do that with like while I have my SCBA on, I'm just kind of like breathing to like the rhythm of a song, and eventually like I don't really pay attention to my breathing anymore. I'm just in that rhythm, and I find that all of a sudden I realize that I'm in that rhythm, and then all of a sudden I stop breathing like then I'm paying attention to my breathing, and it's like, oh, then I just have to get myself back into the rhythm of it all.
Man,
it's kind of like,
man, I'm almost through an entire album here. I better get
yeah, exactly.
I've never done that with SCBA, but I do find that like when I run, I breathe to the kind of beat of the music, and I can't listen to overly fast music when I run because I feel out of breath listening to
Will's run, he just passed.
I know it sounds really stupid, but like I have to listen to something that I can keep in step with and breathe with. If it's too fast, I start feeling like I have to catch up to it, because you naturally just want to.
So you can't listen to Busta Rhymes.
Yeah.
I usually listen to like either like satanic death metal that makes me think I can like deadlift 500 pounds cold, or like EDM.
That sounds about right.
Fluctuation.
I honestly, to be honest with you, I don't listen to music when I do anything.
Really?
Running, working out.
So you're a serial killer.
Yeah. I drink black coffee, I don't listen to music while I do things like that. And there's a few other traits that I have.
I've recently started listening to a podcast called JobTlks while I work out. So everyone should give that a try.
We don't talk too fast. You won't get out of breath.
Yeah. But so this applying those fundamental concepts of SCBA confidence, air management, and how to utilize those breathing techniques are going to come into play when things go south, right? So we've talked recently, we had an episode on bailout, kind of saving yourself, RIT, what happens if you have to save yourself, setting yourself up in a position that's optimal to be rescued if you have the ability to do so. But so a concept that we're seeing a lot more in the fire service is the rules of air management, right? So making sure. And it's a philosophy that I feel like is kind of tough to get over, because guys and gals want to stay in that working environment as long as possible, even though their vibe alert is going off. And I vividly remember someone that's really committed to the rules of air management is Freddie.
Oh yeah.
Because I was listening to you guys work while I was pacing around the station, and your lieutenant was reporting fire conditions. You could hear his vibe alert going off, and Freddie said, "Hey, hear your vibe alert going off. Get out of the building now." I don't know. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's something that we should all be a little bit better at. And, at the recent fire that I was working at, like I said, like everyone has to be, no one's perfect. Everyone has to be better. So like I, was on the fire floor and I wanted to work a little bit and my vibe alert went off and I knew like my relative location to where my point of egress was. And I worked a little bit into that. It's not necessarily the right answer. Right. And like, if something were to go awry, right, where I am now in my vibe alert territory and for whatever reason am lost, trapped, or incapacitated, I no longer have that margin of safety to either facilitate my own rescue or allow like my partners and crewmates the time they need to get to me and to effect a rescue. Like we talked about in the last episode, like they might get to you, but like you said, it takes 4 members to get, I weigh 200 pounds right now, right? It takes 4 members and that's without gear, right?
Are you guys running 30 or 45s?
45s.
Okay.
It takes an average of, I think, 14 or 16. We talked about it in the RIT episode, but 14 or 16 firefighters to pull one
I thought it was
down
12.
firefighter. Maybe it's 12.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of NIOSH and NIST reports about people that have ultimately been fatalities on the fire side from working into that vibe alert space, becoming lost, trapped, and disoriented, and running out of air.
Right.
I believe this might be further out west, but I believe there are, maybe it's California. I've heard of departments that if you come out of the building with your vibe alert sounding,
It is California.
it's disciplinary action.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I believe it's LA County. There's a whole video. The LA County, their training division, obviously very robust, but they have a whole series on implementing the roam policy within the department. It's a little long to put in here, but they're one of those ones that's taken very seriously. If you violate the policy, like they're really trying to institute organizational change. So hear the term roam. It's like the new concept, right? But so quite simply, like what is roam, right? So it's just the rules of air management. So quite simply, roam is knowing how much air you've used and managing the amount of air you have left in your bottle so you can leave the IDLH environment before, all capitals for our audio listeners, before your low air alarm begins to ring, right? So that's a different philosophy from what we're used to.
Right.
Everyone's kind of an alpha male, alpha female that wants to be the one working, to want to be on the line, but hey, like you got to get out.
Right.
Get a new tank, swap out, get a bottle of water,
it's a
whatever,
team
come
sport.
back. It's a team sport.
Team
right?
sport. You got to sub in and out.
Yeah. I've been saying recently, like, talking about like, oh, I'm going to steal your line. And I've been like, I have this like really sharp quip where Paul, my buddy Paul, he was detailed to the rescue that day, and me and Chris were on the line, and we gave the line to Paul, and Paul's like, yeah, I stole your guy's line. I was like, it's not your line, Paul. It's the city's line. It's the taxpayer's line. I'm going to give it to the person that has the best chance of affecting a positive outcome.
I'm gonna use that because I tell John at our station all the time. I'm like, you better be quick because I'm taking that line. If
Yeah,
you're
it's not your line, Will. And the line goes to the person that's best equipped.
which is
to
gonna
deal.
be me.
Yeah, it could be.
It's gonna be me.
But guys are like, oh, I'm going to steal
In
your
my
line.
mind, it's
Good.
always gonna be me.
Yeah. Or if you take it from someone, it's not your line. It's the city's line. It's the taxpayer's line. It's that victim's line.
I like
I'm
it.
taking it.
I like it.
But anyway, so
Whatever you got to tell yourself to sleep at night.
yeah. But if you think about even at a fundamental level of like how important and ingrained like the concept of roam is, the average like NFPA Mayday criteria is lost, disoriented, trapped, low on air. Right? So how do we...
Is low on air subjective? I'm asking
Not
because
anymore, Will. Not anymore.
So I'm asking because is it anytime your vibe alert sounds, or you're under a third of a tank?
It is.
Or is it like in your scenario, like I'm standing here and I see I know where the exit is here, my vibe alert goes off. Is that criteria?
No. So I will give you the appropriate answer is low on air is not a subjective. It's an objective because everyone can look at their regulator to see where 1/3 is. So 1/3 is the criteria. Right, so that's objective. Whether someone wants to view that objective data subjectively and be like, I'm right next to the door, that's up to them. And I'm not going to say that I haven't done that.
Right.
But the objective standard is 1/3.
Yeah. I didn't know if it was like low on air, but you don't know where you are, or low on air, but with,
I think there's
with a caveat, or
there
if it
could
was
be
just
people
like,
with a different opinion on that. I mean, I'm just one person. There's people way more experienced than me. But that's like the actual like NFPA.
Please refer yourself back to the disclaimers of the video.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah. So there's another video from our friend Rick George. Rick Flair. Kind of looks like Rick Flair. Woo! And he's here to talk to us about Rome. So I thought this was, I've never seen this before. So this is essentially when you're transitioning from managing your own air into you're lost, trapped, disoriented, low on air. You're in a mayday situation and you're not affecting your own self-rescue. Someone has to rescue you. So you're optimizing your position for when someone comes rescue you.
Welcome to another segment of Fire Engineering's Training Minutes. My name is Rick George, and today we're filming number 3 in a series of resiliency videos. This video that we're going to show you today has to do with manipulating the wheel on an air bottle to extend your low air. There are certain times where that's going to occur and there are emergency situations. All of them are mayday situations: lost, disoriented, trapped, running out of air. This is what this technique is for. We're going to take it in a step further. We're going to show you in a pseudo search mode, okay, to set up the scenario. Relatively realistic, not completely realistic, but it's just to show you the techniques.
So, executing a primary search.
There you go.
So in this shot, we're going to demonstrate doing a search very quickly. It's the vehicle that we're going to be able to use in this video to show why we're using this wheel technique. You notice that the door was left chalked open. It's so that we can have ambient light to be able to show on the video. Ordinarily, you go ahead and close it for the flow path purposes. So our firemen find themselves on low air. They're coming in to find an area of safe refuge. They close the door behind them or call the mayday. For the purposes of this video, what we're showing you is the technique. They would have called a mayday, they would have used their lunar or whatever it is that your department would offer for an emergency and a RIT deployment. What they're doing is they're taking their packs and putting it in an area of position of comfort. They're going to control the pass alarms so that as the pass alarms start to activate, they can also shut them off. But what they're going to do is they're going to use the breathing techniques that they learned in an earlier video.
So let me know if you guys, I've never seen this before.
Never seen
while
it.
they're manipulating
No.
the wheel on the pack.
So I understand what he's doing, but
It's a little ballsy to me.
yeah, just slow down their oxygen, like availability.
Which is the low air alarm. Some have bells, some have whistles. This technique translates over to the same way.
So they're shutting
There
off
is
the
a
pneumatic
sweet
valve
spot
that actually...
as you're breathing, where you can crack the bottle and start to breathe without activating the low air alarm. So now you're robbing the pneumatic low air alarm of its air to be able to use while you breathe. Combined with the breathing techniques, it'll extend your air from an average, in my department, we found 6 to 12 minutes.
Wow.
Is
That's
the average
pretty legit.
on
Yeah.
Just trying to self-extricate for a low air. And these are the quarter bottles. And what we're seeing is consistent numbers in 45 to 55 minutes, in excess of 62 minutes.
So that's 6 to 12 minutes is the difference between rescue and a recovery,
typically
potentially.
The first time
Yeah.
you get it is about 20 minutes. But
The other thing it does is
listen, you can't argue with success. We've done this hundreds of times, and it's translating into being able to extend your air. Anyone can do this under these circumstances. We're merely showing the technique. For this to be a viable technique, you have to become good at doing it under pressure.
So that's the thing. You have to train that if
Right.
that's something you're interested in doing.
Yeah.
the other thing it does is it shuts the vibra alert off, which is a big mental piece
Yeah, it
of being trapped or whatever the case is. That thing going off on your face like initiates a response.
Yeah.
And so being able to like calm that down and shut it down and just kind of get control of yourself, it's interesting.
Yeah,
That is ballsy.
Yeah, it's
The
something
only-
I had never seen. But
Yeah. I was just gonna say the only thing that I see there is like, if that 6 to 12 spare minutes goes by and now you're down, you don't have your pack converted. You know what I mean? To make, and that's like the first.
Yeah.
That's like the first rule of, it's like you call the mayday, you convert your pack.
Right.
Right. Well, okay. You attempt your self-rescue, call the mayday, convert your pack. So that changes the game there a little bit. Not to say that, listen, maybe doing a rescue without a pack, because you already have the face piece on. It's like most of us have the DRDs, right?
Yeah.
And then I don't know.
I think the other part of it is like you are being extremely passive in your own self-rescue, not in the breathing front, but in the getting out front, instead of like trying to figure out a way out. You've just committed to, I'm going to sit here and let somebody else come for me. And that to me, that's a little bit like, right, wrong, or indifferent. It feels a little bit like.
Do you remember that one of the last videos that we played? I think it was it a female lieutenant? Can't remember. She was trapped and they were trying to get a ladder up to her and they couldn't find her position. They ended up getting her out, right? It was a long video. The audio on it was brutal.
Yeah.
But
that was it was Houston. It wasn't a female lieutenant, but it was Houston.
It wasn't, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought of whatever. Anyways, the Houston video, right? Maybe we edit that part out. The Houston video, right? But it was brutal to listen to, right?
It is.
And you can hear the vibe alert the whole time and everything.
Yeah.
So imagine that though, like 6 minutes in that case. I mean, that would have been huge.
Yeah.
Right? That would have been huge. And she was in a position then.
Unless they were trying to find the window, which eventually is what happened. Like, hey, I'm at a window.
Yeah.
And then, then like
and
you
then
said,
start.
then you could do this. But
Sorry, General.
It's all right.
I don't know. It's just a weird concept to me to like stop trying to affect your self-rescue.
So it could be,
or maybe you see
so
that
again,
as
it's not applicable for every incident, right?
No.
But it's another tool in the toolbox for us and our listeners. So where I could see that is like if my leg is fractured, like I've lost the ability, I can kind of meander myself into like a area of refuge.
Yep.
But like me moving my back is broke, something like where I'm like, all right, I'm committed to being here until I either run out of air or someone gets me, right? I'm immobilized for whatever reason.
Right. When I snap your femur and take your line.
Yes. It's not my line, Will. It's the department's and it's the city's. So again, it's just another tool in the toolbox. And I wasn't able to determine this information, and maybe this is highlighting my lack of knowledge, is if you don't cross that threshold of your low air alarm, can you still activate your pass?
Yeah, your pass stays on until you double click it. So it's on.
But they're kind of like, because it looks like they're almost turning their bottle off in the maybe as my perception.
No, that's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're literally shutting the valve down.
Okay.
And
So
limiting
what'll
come through.
Your pass alarm is turned on as soon as you turn that bottle on.
That was one of my
You could turn your
concerns.
pack. How many times have people turned their pack off and left it and it sounds?
Yeah,
Until
that's
you
true.
double click it with no
Yeah, that's
pressure,
true.
it's not off.
I'm highlighting my own ignorance.
Yeah.
That's what I do on this show.
Or we learn.
We learn something new. So, again, another tool in the toolbox for us and our listeners. Like I said, we try to make this an educational content, share ideas, something they're doing down south. Again, I think it's applicable from certain instances. Maybe you're immobilized and unable to effect your own rescue.
Mm-hmm.
You've effectively, whether you use lunar, lips, whatever you're using, you've effectively communicated where you are, right? You're not just operating on hope.
Right.
And someone's coming.
It's a tool in the toolbox in the right scenario could be worthwhile.
Absolutely. So that kind of concludes that conversation. One thing we haven't done in a while that I appreciated that you did, Will, was kind of like a live review. So I have another video here. So I called it, scene size up, feedback and analysis as we go. So I watched this video. So this video is from, I think it's Copley, Pennsylvania. It's an isolated kitchen fire. It doesn't extend, but I noticed they're doing a lot of things right on the small front. And it's some of the stuff that we've talked about throughout the show of, being very intentional in what you're doing. So
How big is this department?
I'm not sure. To be
It's
honest with you.
ladder 231, and I know some
So
people.
it's probably like they use a lot of like county-based
Yeah.
systems. I'm not sure if it's falling.
Townships in Pennsylvania.
Yes,
Yeah, it's also could be
heavy volunteer culture down there.
it could be that, or it could be they have like a regional dispatch, so
Right.
your trucks get, you know what I mean, like
Numbered
you
and
might,
lettered
you might be,
accordingly.
that might be ladder 231 of one
Right,
ladder
yeah.
in that
Right.
town.
That's what I was
Yeah.
wondering. Yeah. My eyesight is so bad. When you pull this up, I see that it's the front of a truck with the lights. When I look at the little slide on the left, it looks like first and second floor porches burning.
So I'll pull up the video so you can see. But so the overall incident report is Chief 5 arrived and reported nothing showing from 3 sides of the structure. Upon further instruction, again highlights the importance of doing a 360. The chief signaled a working fire. Engine 5 arrived and stretched a hand line to the rear of a 2-story single-family dwelling located on the side of the house, which it was the fire is located on the delta side of the house. They forced entry, which it shows you. It's a good capture of kind of the whole sequence, which I thought was cool. Forced entry and found a well-involved kitchen fire. Made a quick knockdown simultaneously. the 231st ladder of this community, they have a lot of them, arrived and positioned in front of engine 5, truck through ground ladders while other members assisted the engine crew. So I'll make this big for Will. So I'm going to skip to the arrival.
Love that sound.
I like that. Rolls up nice and slow.
Pulls past it. Yep, 3 sides.
So those guys are packed up and ready to go.
Yeah.
So you can see the
These guys
kitchen.
Can you turn it down just a hair?
So it's on the Delta side. You can tell these guys are efficient. Like,
Yeah,
I was
dude.
gonna
That
say,
line
yeah.
was off and pulled and like clean.
Maybe this is a busier.
I think it is because they don't have to talk to each other. You can see them working.
Yep. Wearing leathers. Very
Of course,
important.
That's a trademark, yeah.
Very important.
But I like this video because it captures the entire process.
So it's just like a guy on the street, bystander on the street.
I think so.
Quick call for water.
Yep. Dude, silence too. I love it.
Just the boys going to work.
So getting ready to make entry.
Being better than me and ready to make entry when they force entry.
See, simultaneous. Everyone knows their role.
Yeah.
Try the door, nothing. Call for irons. Immediately right there.
Prepare to raise the ladder on the beam. Raise the ladder on the beam.
Yep.
All right, let's see what happens with the door control. Oh, he's got it.
And right in with the line.
Bam, bam.
Oh, these guys are
Yeah.
efficient.
So you can kind of see, see if I can skip forward a little bit. Ladder, it's throwing ladders to all sides of the building, even though it's isolated to the, reported isolated to the kitchen, but they're giving avenues of egress right off the rip. So it was a small fire with a quick knockdown, but you can see one, a committed ladder culture to laddering the building on multiple sides. And clearly a committed department that knows their stuff. They're efficient in their deployment of lines.
And it could have not been a single room kitchen fire if they weren't as efficient as they were.
And that's so. If you look at the timestamp on here for our audio listeners, I started this video at roughly 40 seconds and paused it at 4:09. So in 3 minutes, they had the bulk of the fire knocked down, the door was forced, and multiple ground ladders placed as avenues of egress in roughly 3 minutes and 50 seconds.
It's a great job. This is awesome.
Yeah. So I just wanted to highlight.
This is when they say smooth is fast.
Yep.
That's exactly it right there. Everything they did was smooth.
Yeah. So just kind of wanted to highlight a small thing, but like the devil's in the details, right?
Yeah.
Checking the door, calling up for the guy to forcing the door effectively using good foundational forcible entry techniques, simultaneously ladder company throwing ladders multiple sides of the building, having that line in place so as soon as good door control, Johnny, like you were saying, and making a quick knockdown.
This is where the episode was on kind of confidence in equipment, specifically talked about SCBA, but this is like ultimate confidence in equipment, right? They put the truck in the right spot. They had the lines pulled off.
This is confidence and ability.
Confidence in tools and in themselves. Yeah, exactly.
And these guys, it'd be interesting to see what like their SOGs and everything are, because these guys got off the truck with their packs, and I wonder if like as they're pulling up and slowing down, these guys are like turning their packs on, right?
Yeah.
Because I never turn my pack on until I'm like getting ready to go, but then sometimes I'm like, shit, my pack's off, and then and then I'm like trying to reach back.
Right.
And, it's like, then I
Sometimes
gotta grab somebody.
some are tougher than others. Yeah.
If
That's one thing that I wanted to say too, is like, I've a couple times I've been like, man, I'm like, who
Wrench this
cranked
down.
this thing so
Yeah.
tight, right?
it's a rubber gasket. You just gotta.
It's airtight.
Yeah.
Like the air does the work
No pun
with that
intended.
gasket.
Literally
It's
airtight.
not. You don't have to be like the Jolly Green Giant cranking this thing
Yeah.
down.
This thing down.
Yeah, for us with the packs, like coming off the squad, is if we, we're gonna see what's going on before we get there.
And you also yours are exterior.
And they're
too, so you don't have
exterior.
that luxury.
But when I rode the engine and we wore them, it was kind of a. Usually didn't turn unless you were like you see smoke and you're like, all right, we're going to work, and then kind of turn them on. But even that could be annoying because you get stuck outside and then you're doing the shimmy the whole time, while you're on RIT or hauling a 2.5 up with a piece of webbing or whatever you may be doing.
So kind of to close that all up for the day, one, being confident in those basic fundamental procedures, confident in your SCBA, right? From there, confident in basic forcible entry techniques, confident in just throwing ground ladders, like especially, for me on an engine company, I don't throw ground ladders at a time. So it probably benefits me. Hey, it's a Saturday. Like, let me just get out there and throw. We have a 14 and 24. Just throw a ladder.
Chuck it. Good.
And that translates to, there's nothing like pulling off to an incident and being really confident in your ability to do the job.
Yeah.
Yep. Everybody knows the role and you just get it done.
Yep. So good job, Copley.
Yeah.
Copley.
So what else you got?
Glad you asked.
Because I was gonna say before we get to that,
Oh.
and I said I was gonna mention it, so I have to now.
Yeah.
A big shout out to Chief Blanchard.
Oh, yeah.
Retired Chief Blanchard. Yeah, he was, I don't know about Will, but he was me and Barry's SCBA instructor. And anybody who gets this far in the episode and listens to it can have themselves a little laugh.
If you went to the Mass Fire Academy sometime in the last 5 to
30 years.
Yeah, 30 years.
Yeah. He was a character.
You've been yelled at by him.
I'm telling you, that guy was an MFer. All I can remember is sitting in the class and everybody just being like dead tired and him being like, say yes, Mr. Blanchard. Yes, just nod your head and say yes. And we'd be like, okay, yes, Mr. Blanchard.
yes,
Yeah, we
Mr.
got it
Blanchard.
right. And then
He's a character.
Man, we got there and he said, I remember he was just like, the first thing you're going to do when you look at your bottles, you're going to check to make sure it's full, right? And no one say anything, goes, nod your head, say yes, Mr. Blanchard. So we're like, yes, Mr. Blanchard, right? So we go in and everyone's scrambling to get their tanks, right, to bring back to their SCBAs to jam them in as fast as they can, right? And I remember, man, I grabbed a half full one. And I stuck it in. I wasn't even paying attention. And then he said, now everybody check their partners. Right, whatever. I forget how he did it, right? And he looks at me and he goes, oh, no. He goes, not you, right? Scream. I mean, he belittled me and somebody else so hard and fast. I remember the guy on the opposite side of me was like shaking his head like, this fucking guy, right? And I'm just sitting there taking the heat like, yeah, I did mess up, right? But it was like, that's the thing, right?
Be coachable.
You will never forget.
You're going to remember it.
After when you get screamed at. I thought he did it with tact. There were people who disagreed, but I thought the guy was so funny, man.
Different people respond. I think you would have done exceptionally well in the military because you respond well to that type of motivation.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you remember this, that first day that we were in the circle going through the packs.
Yeah.
The kid next to me had first time touching a pack in his life, and I
Yep.
had I had a little bit of call experience. So he like whispers, he's like, "What is he like?" You're getting yelled at. And he's like, Barry, can you show me? So I'm like showing him, and this dude immediately sees that I'm helping him, and fucking makes a beeline, not for him, but for me. He's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" And I'm like, I'm trying to help him. He's like, "Oh, trying to be a good fucking friend." He's like, "Are you gonna fucking be there when he's on the fire floor by himself?" And I'm like, "No." And he's like, "Then don't fucking help him." And I'm like,
Sorry, my bad.
"Yes, Mister.
Yes,
Mr. Blanchard." But he was right.
Yeah.
He's like, he needs to be confident on his own without help.
Dude, the next thing I did was I put my SCBA away in the pack without clicking the button twice. And I remember him looking at me. This is when he said it. He was like, "Oh no!" It's like, "Not you again!" And I was just like, "Yeah." Oh man, he let me have it so hard. And listen, I'm not an idiot, but it's like you just forget these little things.
It's new.
And
It's
just-
new.
Gotta own it.
But
I
it's
remember-
one of those things, man, that you will just never forget. You'll
Right.
never forget. And it was like when you go to like check your pack and you do these things and you're like, "Yes, sir, Mr. Blanchard, I won't fail you today."
He's literally like checking it out
remember-
at the station, like,
Yeah.
yes, Mr. Blanchard.
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Blanchard.
Call him Chief.
Do you remember
Chief.
You remember
I
Brendan
don't know
Marshall,
what we
right?
call him. Yeah.
Yeah. He just honed in on Brendan. He's like,
yeah.
"Number 32."
Not again, number 32. What are you doing? Why are you such a disappointment, number 32?
Dude.
You're going to be my best friend, number 30.
Just like he just
That
couldn't
is
get out of
so
the hole he
funny,
was
man.
digging.
Yep. That's,
Oh,
when you get
man.
on those guys' radar, that's
Yeah,
it.
it was
You're
hilarious.
done.
It was the best. Well, anyways, thanks, Mr. Blanchard. 'Cause,
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you did a good job.
Did do a good job. So question of the day. So this should air sometime around Halloween, I believe. Correct?
No, I think before that.
Maybe before that. Perfect.
Maybe. I don't know.
Favorite child Halloween candy? Like if you go to their box and you're like, score.
Dude, Halloween candy.
I can tell you mine. Right?
Yeah.
Just go ahead and rip
Yeah.
it.
Reese's.
Yeah, that was it. When I was a
I
kid,
mean,
it was
that's just
Reese's.
such a
It's
giveaway.
like, I'll trade you this Almond Joy for your Reese's.
Yeah.
But now I like Almond Joys.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I'm
I
gonna
don't know.
It's a refined palate.
once again gonna divert from the norm here because I don't really like chocolate. So I was like Skittles, Starburst.
Sour Skittles or original?
Well, Sour Skittles came out when I was
An
probably
adult?
not trick or treating anymore.
Or were you creep?
I mean, whatever. But I really liked, and I don't see them anymore. Sweet Tarts used to make a sweet tart chew, and it was like
yeah.
Laffy Taffy, but tart,
Laffy Taffy.
but tart instead of just
Wanna
sweet. Dude,
throw
I
back.
love them, but you don't see them anymore. I haven't seen them
100
in
grand
forever.
bars.
I don't really eat candy anymore. I'm not. I like chocolate, but I don't eat a lot of it, so I don't.
Yeah,
even
I'm
know
not a
if
chocolate
it's out
guy.
there or not.
Not that I won't eat chocolate, but
Yeah.
it's never my go-to for anything.
If I go
Especially if it's chocolate chips.
if I go to the grocery store, I'll usually grab like the 2-pack of Reese's and go home and give one to Erica, which
Yeah.
I'll probably do today to say
There you
sorry
go.
for eating your chicken
I was
tender.
gonna say I will throw a caveat in. Those brownies were delicious that
Yes,
she made.
Thank you,
So,
Erica.
Thank you, Erica.
Nicholas?
Reese's.
Reese's.
Yeah.
I feel like that's like
That's kind of like
yeah.
that's kind of a hands down one, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The singulars. You gotta have the
The
singular
singulars.
Reese's.
Yeah. Unless you went to those rich neighborhoods where
Yeah,
you got
the
the full size
2-pack,
The
everything.
full,
Yeah.
well, that was I lived on a military base. We didn't have those neighborhoods, but I heard about them.
Yeah.
Yeah, the neighbor. I'm excited. So this will be Josie's first year. I mean, obviously it's pretty
Yeah.
limited, but
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Last year we did.
Oh, you can't be a pumpkin.
guess I'll eat it.
Yeah. Last year we did. Dylan as Chucky from the Rugrats because he's a little ginger baby.
Yeah.
But this year we're gonna do Chucky from Child's Play.
There you go. Even better.
That's
Yeah.
a good one.
Nice.
Yeah, we're still in contract negotiations because Erica gets mad because I immediately incorporate Kaya into everything. She's like,
Yeah.
Kaya doesn't have to be involved in anything. I'm like, yeah, she does. So like, she's like, oh, we could do this for Halloween. I'm like, yeah, but what's Kaya gonna be? And she's like, she can just be a dog. And I'm like,
Dressed up
No.
like a cat.
no,
she's got to be a horse, and
She can't-
Josie's got to
so-
be a cowgirl.
We're gonna do probably Toy Story this year.
Oh, nice.
And Kaya's gonna be
The slink,
Bullseye.
the
That'd be
slinky dog.
awesome.
Yeah,
That'll be
So-
awesome.
so
Sweet.
classic, classic. Well, that's it, guys. Hope you enjoyed the episode. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. If you have any insights or you're a subject matter expert in air management or developing SCBA confidence, we're certainly not. So we'd love to hear from you. As always, share the message, like, subscribe. The best way you can help us share the message, share the content, share the education, try and make a positive impact in the community is to like, subscribe, and share.
And buy some T-shirts.
Buy some T-shirts.
Buy some T-shirts.
So it's gonna be funny. My initial, this will probably air after our upcoming event, but my question of the day was gonna be for the audience, and it was gonna be, have you bought a ticket yet?
yeah.
It's not for me. So yeah, hope for those that
Did you buy a ticket?
did you buy a ticket? So for those that showed up, thank you for coming, and also they're probably post. But anyways,
Yeah.
without further ado,
JobTlks out.
Peace.